Hey everyone, it is the weekend. Happy Friday to you all. Welcome to EVH and Gear TV. We are live. We're going old school with a Roundtable Van Halen discussion hangout. And I'm joined by Brian Cazzell and Carlo Santin. How you doing, guys?
Hello, hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Nice to have you. Nice to have you. Beautiful weather over on our side of the border. We're just talking about where everybody's from. I know it's nice for Carlo and I. How about your way, Brian?
It has been absolutely oppressive this week. We've been in the upper 90s all week with real high humidity, but today's a little bit of a break, so I'm thankful for that. Yeah.
Good, good. Yeah, we had a bit of a break as well too. Actually, today's a bit more humid once again. But I mean, I keep saying this. We hear these people complaining all the time, and I remember it wasn't that long ago either with the winter that we had. And I know maybe it's because I'm getting older, but it's just so brutal on me that it's gonna take a lot to make me complain about the heat, even though there's been a few days where it's been unbearable.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, we got to be we got to count our blessings and look at the silver lining and everything, I think.
Right.
Carlo, you're probably a little warmer up near Toronto than I am as well too. So you've been pretty hot up that way?
It is very warm. I love the heat. Not complaining. I could do this all year long.
Yeah, I could.
I'm tired of winter.
I know. We'll take whatever we can get. We have people in the chat already. We've got Nemtal over there. Gary Davlin is jumping in. Mississippi Treasure Hunter Chris is here. Paul Perkins is here saying, "What's up, Brian?"
Hey, Paul.
David Ennis. Hey, Eric and everyone. And Ricky Mees is here. And I'll highlight Ricky. Oh, Joseph Sherman's popping in from Colorado. Nice to have you. Thank you, Joseph. So tonight's going to be kind of a fun old school Van Halen roundtable. I haven't done one of these in quite some time, and I plan on doing a lot more of them. They're a lot of fun. And even though we have some ideas we want to go through for the evening, we totally throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And there's a few things we'll talk about, some concerts tonight and things like that. But before we get into all the fun Van Halen stuff, I thought for some people that don't know everyone here on the panel, we'd start with some introductions. And we'll start with you, Brian. So give us a little bit of a background on yourself, what you do for a living kind of thing, if you want to share some of that, and maybe what got you into music and what you do.
Sure. Thanks. So I was Navy for 20 years and did a 20-year career in the military and served all over the world. And then decided it was time to kind of plant some roots. So we came back home. Indiana was home. We raised our boys, got our boys through high school and now off in the military and college as well. So after my career in the military, I started working at a 3D printing firm here in Indiana. So that's been really well. And things have been going just great. So yeah.
Awesome. Military man. Well, first, thank you for everything you've done. A lot of people I see on the groups are ex-military or current military, even Andrew Bonica from Line 6 too.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
That's cool. Good share. Thank you very much. And how about yourself, Carlo?
Well, born and raised in Toronto. I'm a high school teacher right now. I've been a high school teacher about 20 years now. About to turn 50 in 3 weeks. We turn the big 50. Married, 2 kids, 2 boys. I think my wife's upstairs watching, so hi, Vim, if she's watching. And I don't know, what else do I say about myself? I'm a pretty quiet guy otherwise. Got into Van Halen when I was probably about 12. I think it was 1980 when Women and Children First was out. And it was, that was, needless to say, we're all here. That was a pretty life-changing thing.
That's very cool, and I'm glad you mentioned that as well too, because I never asked you about this before. Because Women and Children First. What was the first song you heard by Van Halen?
All right, I can tell this. I'll make this. It's a long story, but I'll shorten it for you.
Have the time.
I was 12. It was 1980. I was over at my cousin's house, and you know how when you're at a family event, it takes an hour to say goodbye?
Yeah.
The goodbyes start, and then you're sitting there 2 hours later, and you still haven't left.
Yep.
So it was one of those, and it was late at night on a Saturday night, and at my aunt and uncle's house, and they had a great big old console stereo with the phonograph and the speakers, and it was like a great big piece of furniture. And there it was, and I was bored, and it was like midnight, and the headphones were there, so I sat down while my parents were saying goodbye. And I popped the headphones on, turned it to the local rock station. And just as I had turned it to this Q107 here in Toronto, just as I had turned to that, Eruption started. I was 12. I didn't know the name Van Halen. hadn't heard anything by them. I didn't really even know a whole lot about music. I mean, I liked Elvis and I liked the Beatles, and I was aware of disco from 1978 and that kind of thing. So the very first thing I heard was Eruption, and they were playing the full album side. So I missed Running with the Devil. I heard Eruption, You Really Got Me, Ain't Talking About Love, and then I'm the One, which was the end of side A on Van Halen 1. And I heard that, and I didn't know what to think, and I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't make sense of what I had just heard.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I wish I could lie and say it was Eruption that I heard first. Hearing and experiencing Van Halen with Eruption is amazing. I don't think a lot of us have that. Some of us have. The younger generation sometimes will discover that now, searching for guitar solos and things like that. But for me, it was An Incredible Rock, and that's why I was thinking at that when you're saying you come in around the Women and Children First era, and I don't even really necessarily like that song today as much as, I mean, I'm not gonna say I dislike it, but it's so far down my list. But that is a treat to discover Van Halen on Eruption. So thank you for the delay. Yeah. Goodbye.
Yeah, I heard Eruption. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what it was. It didn't sound like a guitar to me when not to my 12-year-old ears anyway. And it really threw me for a loop.
Well, a great radio station as well too. I know from where I am, whenever I make trips to Toronto, well, I lived in Toronto for a while as well too. As soon as I get into that range to pick up Q107 on the Highway 401, I love it. And that's usually just a little bit, not too far past London, maybe around Woodstock, I can start picking up. And then it's like the whole drive into Toronto is just so nice. Yeah, great. And Brian, how about yourself? What was the first discovery you had, like discovering Van Halen for the first time?
I can't pinpoint like one event like Carlo. I wish I could. The earliest I remember was actually when 1984 came out, and of course that album was everywhere. MTV was exploding, and you had this onslaught of music videos. And what I remember is constantly stereo, and it was Panama, and specifically it was the breakdown right there after the solo when Eddie rolls the volume knob off, and David Lee Roth is singing the lyrics, reach down between my legs, ease the seat back, and it was just that breakdown moment of that song. And every time I heard it, it was just like, wow, I got to get more of this. So, and I was 13 at the time, when it came out, and it was around the time when, I had some older friends that, drove, and as I started bumming rides to school and other places after school, the stereo was always cranked. And I just remember hearing, Panama on the stereo just constantly everywhere I went. And that's really what did it. And then just seeing the videos, all the visuals of the videos that came off of that album were just crazy. So from my early teens, that's when I was really hooked. I knew the other albums were out there and I knew the band, but I don't think I really gave them a serious listen until then.
Well, it's really cool too. You mentioned the videos too, like with here in Canada, we had Much Music, which was kind of a copy of the VH1 and MTV and that in the States. But during that era too, like you had like you say, Panama was great visuals for the video, Hot to Teacher, Pretty Woman, things like that. They were pretty, thanks to, the production with Ray doing a lot of, the art, what's what I'm looking for? The art director, you know what I mean? Or sorry, Pete Angelus. I wanted to say, but why would I say Ray? Pete Angelus, what David Lee Roth's buddy, right? Was amazing for orchestrating some of those videos, and that's what made a lot of that stuff stick in our heads. And coming into, it was just that was such a cool thing, and all the extra theatrics on top of the regular video production, and and actually in a lot of cases, if you look at it today, was probably relatively cheap budget.
Yeah,
especially Jump and stuff like that. That was, yeah, it's pretty amazing what era we had, and we don't really get that now. We have to go on YouTube and hunt back that old stuff, or not just for Van Halen either. For any of those bands of that era, we have to kind of track it down now, and it was kind of pushed down our throats every few hours on repeat back then.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. Let's jump back over the chat for a quick second. We'll come back. We'll start talking about some of our guitar collections. I left off at Mike Francis is here saying, "Hey guys, Mississippi Treasure Hunters, that's cool. He has a printing degree. That's cool.
Awesome."
Michael Madey, hopefully I've got that correct. Says, "Hey everyone, Guitar News Network is here." Saying hello. Hope all is well. They have their show again tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time. Let me see here. Only printer for 2 years though. Subcontractor now. That first Van Halen changed my life. That's from Mississippi. Brian Watts is here saying, "Hey Eric, finally able to catch a live show. Nice to have you, man. Great to have you." Zach Thong is here saying, "Hey Eric." Ricky Mees says, "Dang, I'm old." And I'm feeling it like you, Carlo. You're just a few months older than me. I turned 50 in December, and I'm not looking forward to it. But it is what it is. I don't feel 50 some days. Today I do.
No, up here, I'm not 50 at all. No.
And that's one thing I was going to ask you too, but let's hold the thought for a second. You talk about teaching, and you've been teaching for such a long time.
Yeah.
That's gotta, I mean, a lot of us, a lot of people that watch the show or teach guitar and music and things like that. Now you're teaching at a high school. That I'm sure it takes just as much a sense of patience and a real, I don't know, just a real discipline. Is it a challenging job?
Yeah. You need a lot of patience. Think of it this way. You have a room full of 30 teenagers and you need to get them interested in, a poem or a book or a short story or, the challenge is to get them interested in their own education and to see that as something worthwhile and valuable and something that you're doing for themselves. So it's tough. Yeah.
I guess it's hard enough to hold one person's attention span and command their attention and discipline and respect, then multiply that by 20 or 30.
Yeah. So I do that 3 times a day. I teach three English classes every day.
Oh, wow. Well, good for you. You must have patience of a saint. Are you a patient person per se? Like outside?
You know what? When it comes to teaching, I'm really patient. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe not with everything, but with most things, I'm pretty patient. Yeah.
I've been commended before. People have told me that I'm very patient when I teach them like computer things, because I'm always working in the computer field when I work with other people, and I'd have to teach them whatever. They'd be like, "Oh, you have the patience of a saint, whatever," and I'm like, "You don't know me. I'm not patient." It's like like this all the time, right? But I guess when you're trying to give someone instruction, whether it be guitar or computer or whatever, you just make it as easy for them because it's an uncomfortable thing for them learning, right? In a lot of cases.
Sure. Well, sure. Yeah, sure it is.
Yeah.
It's not everyone's good at school. Not everyone likes it. Kids are distracted by these.
I can imagine.
Right. Everyone has one. So, it's a challenge.
What do you do in a class for phones?
Well, we actually use them.
Oh.
So everything I do is online. So all the lessons I teach and all the notes that I give and all the assignments that I give out, I built a website for them. So everything's online. So most days we're actually, I'll start the class and it'll be, okay, let's take out your phones, or I encourage them to bring a laptop to class. Okay. So we actually use it.
So there's, they're using it, not doing Snapchat and stuff like that?
Well, they're still doing that, but,
Hard to keep it under control, I guess. Awesome. Zach Thong is here saying, "Hey Eric." Ricky Me saying, "Dang, I'm old." I mentioned that, I think, already. Kev Gems is here saying, "Hey guys." Paul Perkins says his first song was 1984 being cranked on the boombox in the school bus. That is a cool story.
Yeah.
That's how Poison Ivy and I, or now she goes by Nocturnal Butterfly. That's her YouTube name. My Sandra Lee here. That's how we met. We got in trouble as kids on the school bus. And I was that punk kid wearing, ripped up Van Halen jerseys. And I was carrying a boombox. I was trying to be cool, but I was carrying an 8-track player boombox, believe it or not, 8-track. And that again shows my age. And it took like 2 car batteries to power this thing. It was massive. And we both got in trouble on the bus, and we had to sit. Our punishment was to sit with each other at the front of the bus, like for the entire season. And we hated each other at first, and then now look at us, right? So
it's amazing.
Yeah, so that was fun. Let me see here. Ricky Me says, "My first EVH, I was in a band in school in '78, and the band director got involved when he heard Eruption. Very cool teacher." That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta love it when your teachers are into Van Halen.
Yeah.
Do any of your students think it's pretty cool that you're into Van Halen?
They all know. Yeah. I play them the videos. I play them the songs. They know I'm a huge Van Halen fan. And a lot of them think it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Wicked. Yeah. That's cool. And some people are like, "Who's Van Halen?" Right?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Sir, Mr. Santin, you're old.
That's right. They might know him from a reference to a movie or something like that, and that's probably yeah. Mississippi's turning 50 on July 24th. 57 for Ricky Mees. Blimpus is here. Hello, Eric and all. And Mississippi Treasure Hunter says, takes talent to be good teacher. I applaud you, sir. Zach's
Thank you.
is asking me if I'm going to Cosmo Fest tomorrow. No, unfortunately, now I have a weekend cut out for me this weekend. Okay, this is a good question. Barry Gretsch says, what's your guys' favorite cover of Eruption? I won't say his answer yet in case you guys say it, and I'll come back with his answer. Let's start with you, Brian. What's your favorite artist out there covering Eruption?
Whew. It's hard to narrow one, but Jacob DeRaps is just phenomenal. And I would have to say it's a tie with the lesson that Pete Thorne gives. That's just phenomenal.
Fantastic. Great answers. There's no real right or wrong answer. And how about yourself, Carlo?
I'll have to say Dweezil Zappa, because when he plays it live, he usually tells an Eddie story to go along with it before he plays it. And I think that's kind of cool.
As a teacher, I can see you saying that for sure, because you put a story with something to make people associate.
Yeah.
I like that. And what's funny about that is each of those answers, all three of those answers were the ones I included in my video. And that's actually Pete Thorne's. And the Pete Thorne video was really cool because when he put that instruction video out, which I downloaded, and I use it. I've used it as reference many times.
Mm-hmm.
That was back in the day before you could upload anything longer than 15 minutes. So we had to put it up in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think if you want to learn the solo, I think Pete's video, you can't beat that.
It's one of the closest, if not the closest, that's out as far as accuracy. The tone is good, and sadly, the technology back then for him to get the video out there and the fidelity, it's not the best fidelity, but through it, it's not his fault.
Yeah.
I've watched so many people that do everything so close, and then there's one little piece that's always a little off, and I think his is probably the closest. And Jacob DeRaps, as you're mentioning as well too, the kid's got speed. He can that tone from a plexi that a lot of us just can't get without. And then all kinds of pedals and delay and smoke and mirrors, as I like to say, he can do it without that.
And there's another name out there. Have you guys ever really dived into any of Phil X's videos, whether they were, the Fretted Americana videos, or just, I think he's got one where he's doing like a Friedman Brown Eye demo in some music stores. Like there's like some tapestry on the wall behind him, and he doesn't necessarily play Eruption, note for note, or you might hear just a glimpse of it, but it's his overall, skill with any of the Van Halen riffs. I can watch that Friedman video, over and over and over just to hear him play some of those chords. It's phenomenal.
Haven't seen that yet.
He's a phenomenal player. No, I don't see him I haven't watched him do a lot of Van Halen. I've only seen him do Van Halen a couple times, but I know he does it very, very well. But I followed him way back. Did you ever see the band he was in? Not the Drills and things like that, but Powder. He was in the band Powder for a couple of years.
I didn't follow him much then. Yeah.
You have to. There's a song. No, I'm not 100% sure I have it right, but it's got a really, really hook or catchy chorus. I think it's called Up Here, and actually Jay from Jay and Silent Bob is in the video.
Okay.
Jason. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Huh.
Yeah.
The reason some of his stuff is hard to find, it's Van Halen content, is because it's usually embedded with, let's say he's doing a demo of a 66 Strat. You wouldn't know to click on it for a Van Halen tune. But when you watch the 10-minute video, somewhere in there, he's going to throw a riff in there. And that's why, a lot of guys really don't think of him. But yeah, he's usually right on par with just about anybody covering tunes like that.
Wicked. Anybody else, Carl, that you found out there that's doing a good job on it?
On Van Halen covers? You know what? Not recently. No, I haven't.
At the bar.
Jacob DeRaps would be the sort of the most recent one I've become aware of. Other than him, I can't think of any off the top of my head. No.
I do like Dweezil as well too, and the way you mentioned that with the stories, he's always got a story. And I mean, obviously, he learned so many tricks directly from Eddie himself. Eddie.
Yeah. He had. I think he recorded an album when he was like 12, and Eddie came over and produced it for him.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. And he owns one of Eddie's guitars, doesn't he? I think he owns the Rasta guitar.
Yeah. I haven't seen him play that one in any performances myself personally, like watching videos, but I know he had it or has it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool. Trey Alabach says, what's up, Eric? with a C. Yeah, he spelled my name wrong, so he's always being correctful now. He says, "Hey everyone, just put down my Charvel Sandimas with a little Unchained action for tonight's jam. Molly Walters and this rules." Mississippi Treasure Hunter says, "I like Eric's version." Zach Thonk says, "Eric, Trey Alabak, Jacob Giraps." Yep. And yes, this is a really good one too. Blimpus Rock Video says he likes Wolfie's cover. It was really good as well too. Made it look quite effortless.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. I remember that.
Opposed to stretching with the pinky, whatever. Yeah. Made it look easy. That was very, very good for sure. Yeah. Paul Perkins says, "Got to ask, Dave or Sammy? No disrespect to Dave, but I'm a Sammy guy. Love the Dave era. But either way, the band was incredibly successful with both singers." So yeah, we'll go in that direction right now. I know if you ask a question like that in a Van Halen fan group, you're almost assassinated. But yes. I think this is a safe forum to ask that, because I like both eras. I like all eras of Van Halen, and I might as well throw in Gary Cherone as well too. It is an era, it's a short one, but let's start with you, Brian. Dave or Sammy, or can I share your thoughts on either or both?
You know, I have respect for both of them. They were both great in what they brought to the band, and you know, I almost kind of see it as you don't want to say two different bands completely, but they wrote completely different music. I mean, the style of writing, the content, the lyrical content was completely different. Whereas, you know, the David Lee Roth era was kind of more whimsical, and he kind of brought that kind of vaudeville vibe to everything he did. You know, Sammy came in, everything was a little more serious, or had like, you know, love or relationship kind of overtones on everything. But, you know, for me, if I had to write you know, the top 20 list, I'm pretty much split down the middle. I've got just as many, you know, Sammy era songs in my top 20 as I do David songs. So I appreciate them both. And honestly, it's not so much, you know, it's not so much based on the vocal talent either. It's kind of what happened with Eddie's guitar tone when Sammy came on board. I just fell in love with the, you know, the wet, dry, wet signal that we've talked about. And you know, so for me, it's almost like they just ushered in a whole new sound.
Very good.
With Sammy, so that has changed.
Yeah, very good point. We'll talk some tone here in a little bit as well, too, tone eras, but that's a really, really good point. And I think, and we'll jump to Carlo's opinion here in a second, but I think a lot of the things that you said were true about Sammy coming in. It was like about relationships. And, you know, and a funny side note, you look at it, both Dave and Sammy both talked about relationships and sang about relationships, but Dave's relationships would last about 45 minutes, whereas relationships would last, you know, a lifetime or a couple of years or whatever. So one was more about serious, being with a woman forever, and Dave was like, you know, how much time you got, you know, how much time that's the only difference. It was more party and take it to the ball and to the dance and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's just two different things, but two different bands. And great all the way around. But let's go to you, Carlo. What are your thoughts?
I enjoyed the Sammy years. I really like the music, Eddie's tone, the songwriting. I think is really solid. But for me, when Dave left in '85, I was heartbroken. Yeah, I was gutted. For me, it's always been Dave, and for me, it always will be. They just have a different sort of sense of humor and a different swagger when Dave is singing. And I know he gets slammed, especially recently, for his vocals live. But I still love the guy. He's got that great big grin, a huge stage presence. You know, he can still control a crowd and work a stage. And I just think they have a different swing when Dave is singing for them.
I think so too. Different aggression. You know what I mean? And there was never really the two guitar deal. You know, of course, Dave acoustic and things like that too, but you're just focused on one thing. As much as it was nice with the Sammy era, you know, Sammy could, you know, trade off a little bit of guitar stuff with Eddie, but it was just another, I think in my opinion, an obstacle, even though I did like it a little bit for some duels here and there or some little like that, but I did like the live era of the Dave version better. And sure, people are going to attack, they're going to attack Dave's vocals. Even on the best, it wasn't the best, but overall, when you put it together, you know, there was just that everybody had that voice. And when I say voice, you know, Alex's snare, Eddie's guitar playing, Mike's bass and vocals, everyone had a really distinct voice, and it just works so well together. Whereas you start taking elements out of that, you put another drummer in, even a drummer you might think might not make a big difference, but look when Dave went solo with his band. He hired some of the best musicians in the world doing the Van Halen stuff live, and it didn't sound like Van Halen.
No, and Eddie and Alex are attached at the hip. You can't separate the two of them.
That's right.
They rely on each other so much. If you listen to them, they sort of cover for each other. Eddie does a lot of interesting fills, and when he's not doing that, Alex is doing something on the drums. And if you think about it, I don't think, has Alex ever played with anyone else other than Eddie? I don't think he has.
Not that that's much publicized. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know too many people he's ever played with outside of Van Halen.
I've never heard him doing anything. I know Eddie has, but I've never heard of Alex doing anything without his brother.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where it was never comfortable. And you mentioned, like what you said, being connected at the hip. Those guys are almost like they're connected like intravenous, like through twins. They can almost finish each other's sentences. They know where they're going to go musically. That's added such a huge, intravenous catalyst to their playing. It's phenomenal because of that.
I think Eddie said live in his in-ear monitors, he only wants to hear Alex.
Probably.
And he just needs to hear Alex, and as long as he can hear his brother, he knows what to do and where to go.
Yep. Don't need the bass. The bass isn't in the mix much, anyways, for the most part. And he probably doesn't want to even hear Dave to begin with.
Probably not.
And if he has to see him right in the middle of the stage, I don't want to hear him. I'll put it on the stage, but don't give me any of his mix.
There's probably a lot of truth to that, yeah.
Brian Wasson says, first time I heard Van Halen was in music appreciation class. Went home and asked my mom about it. She scolded me for not knowing. She said, listened to Van Halen 1 the next day. I bought a guitar. Now that is a very cool story.
That is cool.
When your parents scold you for not knowing who Van Halen is, that's bonus points. Kev James says Eruption is tough. It is. I've been trying it for a good 40 years or whatever, a long time anyways, 35 years. And I still struggle with it every day. And it's probably one of the first things I go to every time I pick up the guitar. It drives Eric Jr. crazy. He's like, I've heard it and I've heard it and I've heard it. And I'm surprised he didn't say, you're not going to get it right anyways, Dad. You know what I mean? Because I know I'm not. It's once you come to that point and you can realize, I mean, unless you're diehard and you're going to tell yourself that one day I am going to learn it note for note. And I don't even think people that say that are going to. I don't even think they're going to learn it note for note, just because, okay, it's like trying to analyze it. What did he do in this little spot? You think you might hear it, but even Eddie doesn't know it note for note today.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to learn that, but that's a really cool story. Yes, and Trey Alabak is commenting about Phil X. You were talking about him earlier, giving lots of thumbs up on Phil. And Patrick Murphy says, Pete is a man whose demo of the Line 6 Helix caused me to order one. The demo is amazing. And you know what? If we're going to jump a little, so a good point, Patrick. We're going to jump a little bit out of order, but that's how, not how Carlo and I met as far as a Helix, but Helix has become a big part of our lives since. We met through the Van Halen circles and things like that as well, too. But Brian, you and I, that's how we met. So I was Helix, and before the Helix arrived here, the rack, which you can see, we can barely see, it's just where my finger is there somewhere. That's the rack version. I have the floor down here too. I wanted to be like everyone else and consume as much Helix knowledge as possible. So I started watching all the videos, and then going to Line 6 Custom Tone. I thought, okay, let's go look for some Van Halen. Started downloading. There's a bunch of patches up there, and as you know, some of them are good, some of them are not so good, some of them are great, and even some of mine aren't great. We all start somewhere. But yours, I discovered yours. I didn't know who you were yet. You went by the name of Coffee Drinker, right?
Yeah.
So I downloaded one who's called Van Hagar. And Carlo, maybe you have this patch. I don't know. That's the first one I downloaded. And it's a nice that big pitch to tune like you'd expect from Balance, 5150, anything Sammy Hagar era. It gets you that in that wheelhouse. And I was loving it. Went live and started doing a lot of demos. And Brian had jumped in the live stream chat one time, started saying hi. We became friends. And so I want to thank you for that, and maybe just tell us how you got into. We'll start with Brian. How you got into Helix, and then how you discovered you get that really cool Van Halen tone using it.
Sure. So I'll back up to October 2016. Helix had been out about a year, and a real good friend of mine, Joey Varela, up in Chicago. He was a big just Line 6 product guy. Had the HD 500. And at the time, we were both playing in our respective churches, And, you know, I've got my traditional pedal board. I've got, you know, stomp boxes. You know, I was a stomp box guy. Still going direct, you know, by using like a modular pedal at the end, like, you know, like the Tech 21 Blonde series and those type of things. So, you know, and he was just right here in my ear all the time. Man, you got to get a Line 6 product and try it out. And the Helix had come out, and he's like, you know, what'll it take for me to convince you that Line 6, you know, Helix is the way to go? I said, man, I'm gonna have to drive up there and hear this thing firsthand. You know, I mean, it's not just every day you put down that kind of money in a new piece of gear. And, you know, oftentimes you don't want to just go to a guitar store and sit there in front of, you know, a shop full of people and try out the tone. So I made a weekend trip out of it, and he had it all set up there at the church. We plugged it in direct. He had a Marshall amp there that we could go 4-cable method. He's like, I want you to experience this thing for pretty much all the scenarios you can think of. And I was just blown away. I mean, I literally within 10 or 15 minutes, I had a patch created. You know, I had the amps pulled up that I'd always dreamed of owning in real life, but, you know, never thought I would, you know, buy a, you know, $1,500 Mesa head, for example. And, you know, the rectifier is always the one on the bucket list. So, you know, the first thing I do was create a patch with the Mesa rectifier. I throw a little bit of delay, a little bit of reverb, and I start jamming out. I'm like, this is it. I mean, this is the tone I've been looking for. You know, behind me, you know, I've got a JSX half stack back here. The head's in the shop getting some mods done. But, you know, I've had this JSX half stack as my primary, you know, in-house amp for the last 10 years. Bought it new and have been kind of stuck on that one sound. So hearing that Helix and hearing what it would do in the same context of how I would use it, which was direct to front of house through, you know, through a large PA system. And then, you know, I took, you know, I took my EVH flanger pedal, did a couple other things just kind of in the loop of it. And we just had a ball. I think we were in that auditorium for about 8 hours that day, and just had to finally call it quits because we were just played out. So that convinced me. So thank you, Joey. He convinced me, and then you know, a few months later it was Christmas, and did a little gear. You know how we always do. You sell a few pieces and you put a little money towards the fund, and my wife, you know, she helped me with the Helix as a Christmas present. And I have not looked back, you know. So I got the Helix, started using it right away in a live setting. I was using it live with a powered wedge monitor there at my feet at church, and then just feeding a direct signal to the board. So coming home though with it, you know, and unpacking it, I thought, you know, I really, really need something at home that would really do the Helix justice. So I'm sitting here with the, you know, with a half stack that's not getting used, and I really didn't want to, you know, plug in 4-cable method and do all that every single week. So I invested in just a real inexpensive brand, kind of an unknown brand of 8-inch studio monitors. And I had some 5-inch ones. I won't say the brand, but, you know, they just sounded kind of boxy. You know, you get that plastic boxiness. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe the answer is going up to a larger speaker. So I went from a 5-inch to an 8-inch studio monitor. Blew my mind. All of a sudden, I'm hearing the Fender tones. I'm hearing that bounciness out of the speaker. You know, I'm hearing the true amp kind of sounds, even though they say, you know, that the Helix wasn't really modeling an amp in the room, but I'm hearing the amp sounds that I wanted. So with that in mind, I finally got, you know, the 2 stereo monitors left and right, and they're sitting, you know, as I'm sitting here at this computer desk, they're right here in front of me, kind of facing out. And then the quest was on. I said, wow, okay, now that I know I can get the sound, what is the first thing I want to do? Van Hagar. And honestly, for me, the tone chase on that started, I would say, back when Balance came out. I was kind of just, you know, starting on my music journey, and I had some really cheap gear. I had my beginner Squier guitar that everybody starts out with, and I had, at the time, a PV Classic Chorus 212 amp, and it was a solid state amp. It was a really good amp, and when they came out, you know, they weren't cheap by any means. I think I think in '94 they were like $500. So it was a pretty significant investment to have one. And it, you know, it didn't necessarily nail the gain, or, you know, nail that distortion sound that I really wanted. But hearing a true stereo combo amp for the first time, with the chorus kind of circling around your head, and if you put your head down, but you know, in front of the amp, it just made it just made the room just feel so huge, and the sound just was so huge. So what was it? Another year later, Balance came out, and I went, wow, that's kind of close to the sound, you know, minus the modulation and stuff. So that really, you know, kind of burned in me, you know, like I've got to have that tone. And when it came to the Van Hagar, writing the Van Hagar patch, I really started studying, you know, all the different pieces of gear that would have been required, you know, in like traditional analog gear to make that sound happen. And it's right there. It's all there in the Helix. And you know, when you and I started writing back and forth about, you know, the later, the wet, dry, wet signal, I literally was going to embark on the same type of thing where you go by the power amp. That's a 2-channel power amp. You know, I knew I had the JSX as a center cab and an amp, which would have been fine. And I was literally getting ready to purchase 2 extension cabinets to do the panning, you know, stereo effect, you know, but then you got to add the eventides on top of that. You got to have the rack delays. And so back to Joey up in Chicago, he's like, wait a minute, you've got, you know, a powered monitor that you've been using. Why don't you plug that in and put that in your stereo, in your current stereo monitor rig, and use that as a center drive? And once I learned how to configure the routing, you know, and make one signal path go straight out dry, and then have the stereo configuration go out through XLRs to the monitors, I mean, you know, it was just tone heaven. And I immediately went, wow, you could have spent $2,000 to $3,000 easily on buying just the physical gear needed to make that sound in the old days. And it was already right there in the library, and I didn't have to buy anything. So I was just amazed.
Exactly. And I just want to interrupt for a quick second. I want to say thank you to Chad Boston for $4.99 super chat. Thank you, Chad. That's very, very cool of you. I really greatly appreciate that. And like you were saying too, you knew exactly what to go for. And Jason Seitz has made some really good points, and even some of his videos he's done on Helix. He said, you know, it's nice to have a good understanding of real world pedals, and then how to apply them, you know, in the virtual world. And that's where a lot of us, you know, some of us in the Van Halen communities know more than others about with the gear he was using in certain eras. You know, we all kind of have, you know, and I'm not putting myself on that scale saying I know any more than anybody else. I just have a general understanding like everybody else. And so if we want to go for a certain era, we can know that, okay, there's no pitch detune needed. He wasn't using any eventides or anything like that. Or, you know, just, you know, a Marshall cranked, you know, with the 57 stuck on the cab.
Yeah.
Something newer, like you were going after the balance era, where a lot of people come in on that balance era. It's kind of cool, the younger people and older people. And you ask them why, and it's just, well, I really like Eddie's tone there. And it was, you know, very rich, right?
Yeah.
So very, very cool with the approach that you took with it. And obviously, like you said, you go with the bigger speakers. You're really starting to feel that's, you know, the separation. You're getting some bottom end out of it, some you know, some substance. And
right.
Before I went to anything amp wise, I was using Helix through 8-inch speakers here as well too. And you know, they're your traditional spacing apart, just like you. You can't see them on camera here right now, but they're here and here, and you just get in the middle of it, and you just like kind of stereo. It's beautiful, and ping pong delays, and you know, all that kind of good stuff. It's really hits home. But Carlo, how about yourself? I know you were a tube guy, and you know, tube, and did not really want to look too much into the digital world, and then kind of tell us you went into one direction with some Line 6, and then another kind of hop and step from there. Share your story with us on that.
Yeah, I started with the HX effects because I wanted to use it with my tube amps, and you know, 4-cable method, and just use it for effects. So that's how I started. And then I took a trip to the local Long and McQuaid here, where I live, and they rent out. They sell used gear, and they let you rent out used gear for like a month or 2 months or whatever.
Oh, cool.
And I walked in, and they had I like how they do that, and it's I walked in and they had a Line 6 Helix rack, a used one sitting there. And I said, well, let me try and rent it, and I'll play with it for a couple of weeks, and then I'll return it. And, you know, it's right behind me here.
Nice.
If you can see it there. So I brought it home. I have this great big Line 6 Helix rack. I thought, oh man, this is going to take me like years to learn how to use. So you know, I thought I'll mess around with it for like a week or two, and then I'll return it, and then I'll go back to my tube amps. And I plugged it in, and literally within about 5 minutes, I had figured out how to dial in, how to load up like an amp model, and then a delay and a reverb. And being familiar with tube amps, I sort of set it on the Helix the way I would on my 5150 back in the corner there. And within 5 minutes, I had a tone coming out of, I'm using the 4-cable method with a little combo that I have. I had tone coming out of that thing that I was stunned, like within 5 minutes. And right away, I knew. I said, okay, I need to give this some serious thought, because you know the old 5150 I've had that thing for like 25 years now.
Wow.
And every time I retube it, it costs me like $250 Canadian.
Yeah.
And that I seem to be retubing it now if I play it a lot, every 2 years, because tubes for some reason don't seem to be very well made anymore. They don't last very long. So just on that alone, the Helix rack made me sort of really rethink my whole approach to playing guitar and using tube amps. I love tube amps. I always have, always will. But I find with the Helix, I'm not really losing anything in terms of tone, in terms of feel, in terms of like I'm not the greatest player in the world, but I'm very sensitive when it comes to touch dynamics and feeling connected to the amp that I'm playing through. Yeah. So if I have my guitar and whatever I'm plugged into, I'm very sensitive to being connected, having that connection. And if I don't feel that connection, I can't play properly.
That's a talent in itself as well too. So you don't sell yourself short there, because that's a bit of a gift to be able to know, because some people can just plug into anything and they'll if they're no good, they're going to sound no good no matter what they play on. Or if they're phenomenal, they can probably sound good on almost anything. But the fact that you know you need a certain tone and you know how to get it, that says a lot.
Yeah, I've never been able to play just on anything. I'm kind of picky when it comes to gear. And I find that some gear works really well for me, and others I just can't connect to it. And I know right away, as soon as I plug into an amp, I'll know right away whether or not I'm going to get along with it. As soon as I pick up a guitar, I'll know within a couple minutes whether or not it's going to work for me.
I'm the same.
Yeah. And so the Helix, I had 5 minutes playing. I knew the tone was there, the feel was there. I felt completely connected to what was coming out of the speaker. It felt and sounded to me like a real amp, and I felt completely connected to it when I was playing through it. And that was within 5 minutes.
That's good. That's really good.
So
people have mentioned many times. They've said, "What's the difference?" And I forgot that you got the rack until tonight. I thought for some reason you had the floor. So that's cool to know. Yeah. People have always asked me, and I'm sure you guys all get this all the time too. And Chad gets it in his group. What's the difference between the rack and the floor? You know, and we basically always say nothing really, right? Now, obviously, there's differences with the LT, less sends and returns, and all that kind of stuff. But with the rack, there is an advantage I found, and this is something I like here with my setup, is that if I want to do the stuff like Brian's heard me do, and you've heard me do, Carl, sometimes I'll use Helix left and right through my mixer for like the really big wet sounds, and then I want 5150 dead center right up the middle. What I do with the rack, if you notice on the back of it, Carl, if you haven't noticed it, there's a direct out, like I shouldn't say direct out, guitar buffered out or whatever. A line you'd run to your tuners or to whatever you want to do. Processed by Helix. So what I do is I run that to the 5150 input. It doesn't matter any one of those. No effects in the loop. So it's just raw, dirty, in your face 5150. And so I got a mic on the cabinet, and everything's running through my mixer. I'm playing through headphones. And I'll just blend in just a little bit of tube 5150. And I'll start with 5150, no Helix, and it'll sound kind of cool. And then, but you're lacking that dimension. Then I'll unmute the channels where it's left and right Helix, and it's like, wow. And then just real candy for the ears, right?
Yeah.
I do like that. But that's really cool that it worked for that quickly. And you also said before a while back too, getting Helix was the first time you'd actually written a song because of it, because you were so inspired.
So here's what happened. You know, like a lot of us here, I spent my youth. I started playing guitar when I was about 14 or 15, and I spent all that time up until now chasing Eddie, chasing his tone, learning the licks, learning the songs, trying to learn Eruption. You know, for years and years and years, and had a lot of fun doing it. I'd walk into a guitar store, and I just, where's the Van Halen stuff? And I wouldn't really look at anything else, right? I'd look for the Eddie guitars and the effects and the amps and everything else. So I was chasing Eddie for my whole playing adult life. Since I got the Helix, I kind of stopped that. I'm not really chasing Eddie's tone with the Helix, and I'm trying to find my own sound and develop my own style. And I started writing a song. I'm almost done, actually. I'm just working on the solo now, and I have one part in the solo that I need to kind of figure out and get through. And then once I do that, I'm going to record it with the Helix to, I don't know, to some software. I haven't figured that out yet. I'm not there yet. Mm-hmm. But since getting the Helix, I've kind of not given up chasing Eddie's tone, but that's kind of on the back burner now. And I'm trying to find my own voice and develop my own style. And I don't think I would have done that had I not gotten the Helix. I'd still be chasing Eddie's tone. I'm probably having fun doing it, but the Helix really, I don't know what it was, but the Helix really kind of opened my eyes, and it made me realize, hey, you know what, maybe, trying to play like Eddie and sound like Eddie is great, and it's a lot of fun, but maybe you should maybe try and focus on maybe your own identity a little bit more and try to see what you're capable of doing.
I like that. And Brian, how did it affect you? Do you still chase? Or are you more like, okay, now I'm a little bit more satisfied, I kind of do my own thing? How did it affect you?
Well, it affected me in a way that I no longer crave buying stomp boxes. I mean, I was, you buy one every other month or something, and it's just like you go through them like crazy. But yeah, along the same line as Carlo, I mean, I literally, I had written some songs over the course of the years with different friends I'd hung out with, and they were front porch songs. Hey, get the guitar, let's play a song. But to really take it to the next level, that didn't happen until after buying the Helix. And again, credit to my friend Joey, who's always writing music. He's like, hey man, I really want to hear what you can do. And I thought, I've never had the equipment. I've got a half stack. This is before the Helix. The half stack had a direct out. And so what I did was bought like a $79, what was the brand? They make Studio 3, the recording, the DAW. PreSonus, yes, thanks. So I bought like the little $79 entry-level single channel interface, which came bundled with, their starter, DAW. And yeah, and I use it to do a few riffs. I would email the riffs up to my friend Joey. He'd use them in his songs and everything. But after I got the Helix, and that took over as the interface, that was the game changer. So really, yeah. Carlo, I mean, that's really what will happen is you hook that, to your computer, run the USB into your, into your PC or Mac or whatever. And with literally a free DAW, you could even do it in something like Audacity. Now, all of a sudden, you have the interface that you needed before separately. It's right there. So, over the weekend, I actually plugged in a microphone. I mean, I've never recorded my voice. And it was just for like a little jingle type of a thing. I wasn't singing. You don't want to hear me sing, but the tools are there. And I even went into the template section of the Helix. I think it's on like bank number 5. There's like a whole row of templates. And there it was, guitar and vocal. So I opened that up, and one whole signal path was dedicated towards using an XLR plug direct in, because the Helix has a dedicated mic input XLR on the back. So I plugged the mic in, boom, there it is. Now all of a sudden I've got vocals. I can record those if I wanted to. But, to really answer the question, I have actually opened a Reverb Nation, the website where you can upload your own music.
Yep.
I opened the Reverb Nation site to upload 2 songs that came strictly out of the Helix through the inspiration. So I was taking weekly lessons from a local music store. And my instructor, Casey, was always getting on me. He's like, you know, you're always bringing me Van Halen stuff. You want to learn this, you want to learn that. He goes, I'd like to hear what you could put together. Why don't you? He's like, I think you're hitting that point in your journey where the next step for you is to really tap into like your own creativity. Let's hear what you can bring to the table. And he was spot on. Carl, you're spot on. I mean, it was such a rewarding thing. It only took me a few months to really kind of flesh it out and record. And you know, the interesting thing about it is when you're in control of that sound that you're trying to capture, it's amazing how many takes you'll allow yourself to go through to nail it, you know. And every time I would redo a clip, you know, it would renumber the clip that was inserted in the DAW, and I was seeing numbers like, you know, 95. You know, it's like, wow, I've actually, you know, pasted 95 different takes into this thing. But I was just having a blast, and I've never written a song like that to that level. I've never recorded it and had anything come out that professional. And everybody that's even heard it is like, wow, that, you know, it sounds like you just went into a studio basically and had it done. So for me, the inspiration was having the tool. As you know, as much of it is the sound, it's also the hardware that all of a sudden you have in your possession to be able to record direct, which, you know, was never there.
Yeah, back like the Tascams and the Fostexes, and you know, those cool as they were. You know, people getting into the scene today, us old guys, running to record, it's great. But for the younger generation coming in now too, I mean, they have a silver platter waiting for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the tools are there. You know, let's jump into some gear for a second. I'll probably like people staring at some beautiful striped guitars on your back wall there, and I know a little bit about them. So what I'm gonna do here, if you want, but let's start with your 5150, and I'll keep talking for a second while you grab one, if you can. Okay. Brian has showed us a couple times, actually, some people in some of the Van Halen groups and whatnot. This beautiful home built he's done, and you know, it takes a real special talent. You know, there's a lot of people out there that do them really good. There's some scary ones out there. This is a really good recreation. Tell us a little bit about this one. What got you into it? What, you know, gave you the bug to do it? Any trial and error things you did, and maybe some tips you can share for people that want to do their own, that kind of thing.
Yeah, certainly. So I met my good buddy Paul Perkins, who's in the chat, at Gear Fest last year up at Sweetwater here in Fort Wayne, and we were, you know, going around looking at guitars. And when the event was over, you know, we started, you know, just chatting through email and text and whatnot. And both of us are huge Van Halen fans, so it's funny. At the same time, we both mentioned each other. Hey, I was thinking about, you know, adding, you know, a 5150 to the collection, and this one, you know, it came out of, I guess, after having the result of building a Frankenstrat from basically scrap parts, and seeing how well that went. And, you know, it was just such a rewarding process. I told Paul, I said, you know, why don't we do the same thing here? So there's a lot of good, you know, forums and groups and things you can get into. And it's so interesting how tight-knit that Van Halen community is when it comes to helping everybody out with information, resources, and things. So I really relied on that. There was a handful of guys in particular in those groups that you could reach out through Messenger and get direct information as far as just, hey, I'm stuck on this paint, you know. And there's all these myths about, you know, what brand of paint was used, what color of paint was used. And every so often, George Felice, who was one of the employees at Kramer at that time, would chime into the group and just set the record straight. Like, no, there was no such thing as, you know, Schwinn bicycle paint on the 5150. You know, for crying out loud, they were built in our factory, and we use paint guns, and, you know, he'll give you the brand and everything like that. So really, you know, for me, it was, you kind of got to peel back the layers of the onion, and you got to dispel some of the myths that you're constantly reading. And then at the end of the day, you got to make your own decision when you're buying parts. I mean, this is a guitar that you're going to play for yourself. And I hear all these guys talking about, well, you know, what string tree did Eddie use? Or, you know, what you know, size frets did Eddie use? And, you know, if you want to play the thing and have it yours, you know, there comes a point when you've just got to make the decision of, hey, what's going to work for me? I mean, if you've been playing guitar for, you know, 30 plus years, like we all have, you know what you like, you know what you don't like. And when it comes to the aesthetics of it, I mean, sure, you want to get, this is not going to affect how you play it, but everything from here on up will. So we basically just kind of set out to, find the best parts. There's a consensus in those groups of, who to use. And so we just went about ordering, various parts, hunting down, things like the German Floyd, finding a good used one. Like you could put a brand new one on there, but if you want it to look aged, find a used one. And so a lot of the fun was in just the chase.
Scavenger.
Pardon?
A scavenger hunt.
Yeah, it was a total scavenger hunt. I think we spent maybe 2 or 3 months just looking for the the right tuners that have the 90-degree little dog ear tab for the screw. Yeah. When you really get into it, I mean, those are the things that everybody wants to get right. So, but it was a fun process to take one from bare wood and a pile of parts and to have a good playable guitar here. Now, I certainly I don't have all the right skills to put them together, so I did all the paint and graphic work on this one and the one behind me on the wall, and then sent them out to a company out in California, a good luthier out there that I trust, and had him put them all together just because it's, you can get in over your head, and if you don't have the right tools, it's, you don't want to mess up on something like this when you've got your blood, sweat, and tears in it for, several months. So
nothing wrong with knowing when to jump out of something. You did the right thing for that, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And you still had your hands in it. And the funny thing is, I had no idea you started with the Frankie. I mean, logistically speaking, if I was doing it, and I painted a bunch way back in the day, but I never did them accurate. But they were good. They were decent. Nowhere what you've done, but I never attempted a Frankie, and I don't think I ever will. I don't discourage people from trying it because I think there's a lot of fun in doing that. But that one, what was the difference for you between the two as far as the difficulty factor?
It was daunting. Just to give you an idea on the time frame, from start to finish, this was about 3 to 4 months. The Frankenstrat was a process of about 8 or 9 months. And, I've gotten a lot of, grief on YouTube for that because I have a video, like a time-lapse video, and I get all this grief. Why did it take you 9 months? Well, the funny story behind the Frankenstrat is my boss, Todd, he is a huge Van Halen fan as well. And, every year at Christmas, we're a small family-owned, company. And the employees would always kind of put together like a little, pass the basket, let's get the boss something nice for Christmas. And we were always doing like gift cards to, Golf Galaxy or, something like that, right? Something kind of cliche. And I saw a video that it basically was, how to build a Frankenstrat under $300.
I saw that same one.
Yeah, and the guy did a phenomenal job on it, and I watched that and I showed it to some coworkers. I said, guys, if we're looking for something really unique, that would be the one. So, so there is a video of that being put together by the employees on my YouTube channel. But so truth be told, it took 9 months because we had to do some of the painting and things to it while the boss wasn't there. So, we would have to like bring it in without him knowing, do something real quick and short to it, and then get it out of there before the boss saw it. So, our time to work on it was extremely limited. And so we were kind of, allowed to take 9 months for it. It wasn't, we weren't, in a super huge rush because we started in the beginning of the year. And when the idea came about and everybody, really liked the idea, I said, well, I've always wanted one too. Why don't we build two at the same time? I think as far as the economics of that process goes, I mean, you pick up, you pick up a lot of time on the second one. And I wanted to learn how to do it right on the first one before moving on to what would eventually be gifted to him. And it worked out. That system really worked. So if you ever think about doing one, I would think about just doing two at the same time. I mean, you save on a lot of time and shipping and things like that for parts. But it was very daunting. There's a lot of again, there's a lot of templates and help and things you can get, but yeah, that the stripe pattern was just crazy. It was just crazy.
Well, see, that's what a lot of people don't understand too. Like, it's not like you were retired, you're sitting at home doing, you have nothing to do, and you got to,
Right.
you know, never have to work again. You know, everything's great, and that you just work on your guitars, you know, 24/7. It's like maybe an hour today, maybe there's 3 days that you can't touch it. So I mean, as long as you stay to it, it's certainly a lot better than what I would do, because myself, I am so darn impatient, and anyone will tell you this that's seen me work on guitars, or you know, Junior and I will paint some things here. When I was a kid, you know, painting Van Halen guitars, I would stripe them, paint them, and I look at my watch and I say, oh, it's been 15 minutes, paint should be dry. And there's like thumbprints, you know, like embedded in the guitar. You know, there'd be like mustache, you know, mustache hairs. Yes, I had a mustache. Into this horrible stuff, and so it takes time. And then you got to, you know, a lot of people don't know that, you know, in certain areas, weather, you know, humidity, lack of humidity. There's so many factors, you know, paint won't dry, you know, it's just, and okay, do I have a shop? I can only use my friend's garage on certain hours. You know, there's so many factors. It's saying to yourself, I want to do this is one step. And then okay, how do we go about it? I've got a guitar sitting over here. It's a Music Man that Junior and I want to stripe. We're going to stripe it like, you know, the Pound Cake Music Man. And I'm thinking what I'm going to do now, just because number one, that's a pretty easy one to replicate. I'm going to make it a little harder, but you don't see a lot of copies. I'm going to do the Canada Day Music Man.
Yeah.
Do that one, which is cool, because I don't see a lot of guys with that one.
Were you at that show, Eric?
Yeah, no, I was not at that one. The one in Barrie?
Yeah, I was at that one, yeah.
Cool. No, that's one I did not see.
Yeah. That was great when he brought that guitar out with the Canadian flag on it, yeah.
Very, very cool. Give us a quick run. Since you got the 5150, I won't have you grab the Frankie off the wall, but just tell us about, as far as the 5150, what did you went with pickups, and share some of the parts if you want with us.
Sure. So this was a Christopher lock body, LOCKE lock body, and a Music Craft neck, and went with the original German Floyd. Again, it was just, you know, it was already weathered. You know, it had all the tarnishing on the fine tuners, and it's a Pariah pickup, P-A-R-I-A-H, Pariah. So they offered a, I'll try to get in the camera here. They offered a relic version. So it already had, you know, like the white tape around the top. It's got, you know, some of the wear on, you know, above the bob in there.
Perfect.
And yeah, it was the era, you know, gave that era of sound. Got the, you know, the frictionless, you know, EVH pot. You know, standard Goto tuners. You know, did the eyelets on these, and oh yeah, did you know, the big brass block upgrade there on it. The neck plate was always a source of conversation on these, you know, online groups. You know, what was the serial number, and you know, these are engraved, you know, and the originals were stamped. And I contacted Dave at Frets on the Net, and I'm like, hey, you know, I sent him a photo, and I'm like, your plates look great. These are a reproduction plate, because they're, you know, that size is just not used anymore by anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, is there any way you can make like a V cut engraving on the serial number and the made in the USA? And I think it'll look closer to stamped steel. You know, they were stamped steel and chrome plated. So he did some renderings in CAD and sent them back to me to look at. So yeah, and I think it turned out really well. And I'm seeing now a lot of the guys in the group are going that option. It's actually an option now on his checkout menu, or his, you know, his website menu. I don't think it was there before. I'm not sure, but to me that was the one that, you know, that really made the difference, was the way that was engraved.
It does. On camera, it does.
Yeah. So, you know, that's pretty much it. You know, standard 6100 frets, EVH 81 to 91 back profile, which is interesting. This is my first guitar with that asymmetrical profile, and it's different. You know, it feels really comfortable because you've got all that meat, you know, right there in the palm of your hand, while your fingers are kind of thins out on that side. Mm-hmm. When you look down the guitar, you know, like this, you can actually see that offset, you the offset radius there. So
action pretty low on that one. Is your action pretty low on that guitar?
Oh, yes. I don't know. Can I mention who put it together for me?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I sent these out to Lee Garver at GMW, who does just phenomenal builds on his own. I mean, the guy's got a brand. It's a boutique brand, and he builds for some of the stars, like Oz Fox back there, and I sent him the Frankenstrat the way I actually assembled the two Frankenstrats. They were garbage. I mean, Mighty Mite neck. It had the really cheap special Korean Floyd. The action was like a 1/4 inch off the neck. I couldn't get it any lower. And when I sent him, what you got to do is get rid of the Korean Floyd, put a real German Floyd on. And again, keep in mind, we built those just strictly to stay under a certain budget,
Right.
And so, there it was 4 years later out in the hands of Lee, and he made that thing just play like absolute butter. It was effortless. And I knew from that experience that, okay, he's going to do the assembly work on these, and the same result. I mean, the strings are just like, right off of the frets with, no buzz or anything. So I've been really happy with that decision, because I knew from my own experience that I couldn't possibly, achieve that on my own. So
fantastic. We'll come back to some of your other guitars in just a second, but thank you for showing us. I was
sure.
Really check it out close up. I've seen some pictures online, but I didn't see it this close up. So that's pretty cool. Carlo, how about yourself? Over the years, have you ever painted any up for yourself? Ever tried experimenting with it at all?
I have, and much like you, Eric, no patience. And I'd rip the tape off after a half an hour, and it would be all smudged, and my handprints would be all over it, and there'd be more paint on me than on the guitar when I was done tearing the tape off of it. So, but let me say, Brian, your guitars are beautiful. Great job.
Thanks.
They look amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
I bet they sound great too.
Yeah. They once I put the right pickup in, the Frankenstrat, again, it was a cheapie when I built it. I put a VEH for vintage extra hot, right? They couldn't use the EVH, but they used VEH.
Yeah.
And it got the job done. But I put a real EVH the Frankenstein, the EVH brand in there. Whoo! Night and day difference.
Yeah. I keep saying I want to do a build, and I do, but I don't have the time. I just haven't gotten around to actually starting.
Right.
And I'm a lefty, so I kind of maybe need to do my own build so I can get something I'm happy with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Options are limited, right? Somewhat limited anyways. They're getting a little bit better now from EVH Direct, but still limited compared to what we are spoiled with right hand.
Still very limited. EVH has started to take care of the lefties. They released, I have back here, not too long ago, the Wolfgang Standard left-handed model. So they offer a white one and then a black quilt top. So I got the white because I was sick of playing black guitars, because any guitar manufacturer that makes a lefty, all they offer you is black.
Oh.
I got so fed up of playing black guitars over the years and only seeing black guitars that I wanted the white one for a change. So I picked this one up. I think it was like $750 Canadian, which is pretty affordable, I think, for a guitar in 2018 in Canada. And I'm really happy with it. So this is one of my guitars. And my other one is just over here on my other side. This is the original. This is the US Wolfgang. I got this in 2011.
Nice.
When I bought this, so this is, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a cherry quilt. A little bit hard to see. When the light shines on it, you can see the quilt. Otherwise, it looks a little bit dark. I bought this in 2011, and when I bought it, the Canadian dollar was on par with the US dollar. And I bought it from a guy in Michigan. And it was, I think it was $2,800 I paid for it. And now the US Wolfgangs in Canadian dollars, it's about 4,100 Canadian dollars now.
Ouch.
And there's no way I'm paying that much money for a guitar. So so it's $2,800. and it was my first really nice, beautiful, proper guitar. I had played a lot of garbage guitars up until that point, like just whatever I could find. I'd walk into a store and whatever left-handed models I could sort of get my hands on, that's what I made do with. And I tried fixing them up, and some of them I tried striping, and you know, and I'm not very good at building guitars and assembling things, and I'm not good at soldering and that kind of thing. So I've always struggled trying to find a guitar I've been really happy with, and then when these became available, I jumped on it right away. And it's a lot of money. $2,800 is a lot of money still today, but I figure I'll have this for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
and I'll play it for the rest of my life. So $2,800 really isn't much of an expenditure for something I'm going to have with me for the rest of my life.
That's 4 standards right there.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, 4 standards. Yeah, yeah, but the standard wasn't available as a lefty in 2011. That was only 6 months ago. They started offering those.
Well, it's a good investment for sure. You definitely made the right choice in that, and that was, I remember that day. It didn't last very long when our dollar was the same. It was especially paid in American funds or whatever, you know, or it was, or just cross-border shopping was great. You know what I mean? It was kind of a nice day, but I think it was like a day and a half we had that dollar, and it was short-lived.
Yeah, so I took advantage of it and got this beauty, and so yeah, it'll be with me forever.
Do you have others as well too? Are those the 2 that you have right now?
These are my 2 main ones. I managed to pick up. Let me grab this one here. This is an older Yamaha, which I got from a guy on Craigslist. I only paid like $200 for this, and it was in really good shape. So I went for it. I picked it up. And this is actually a really nice guitar as well. I don't know if you can see that. They're really well made. Yamaha.
We might have lost you there. Hopefully not. Did Carlo freeze?
Yeah, I think he froze.
I'd have to have him pop back in. That looks like the same trim that's on the Yamaha Pacifica I have. We'll see if we can get him to jump back up. Maybe he'll come back in. The only thing I don't like about the tremolos, they don't use a standard 3mm. At least maybe his does. I don't know. They don't use a 3mm Allen wrench up at the top.
Oh, okay.
Weird one. It's like, I don't want to say it's a 5mm, but I wonder if I have one here. It's a very, very odd size. So what's the problem with that is if you're at a gig, you know, there's always a guitar player around that's got an extra 3mm wrench. If you don't have one, or this one, you're kind of stuck, right? I remember seeing so many come through the music store, they'd be all chewed up at the top because people would lose their wrenches and they'd be using vice grips on it.
Oh no.
Yeah. I'm gonna kick Carlo there for a second. Hopefully he'll come back in. Let me see if I can eject him, and I will send him a message to pop back on. You know what? Just for a second, while we're doing this, it'll give me some time for a minute too. Why don't you grab the Frankie and we'll share that. I'll put it on your window.
Okay. Sure. Perfect. Let me pull this earbud out.
No problem. I'll switch over to your window.
Okay, so yeah, this is the Frankie. Let's see. Key components on this. Started out with a K&E body, and it's a Northern Ash, and it's probably double the weight as the 5150. I mean, this thing is really heavy. So that's the first difference, you know, when you notice when you pick it up. The paint on this, I think it was a Duplicolor. Everyone's using Duplicolor on these. It was called Super Red 2. I think it was a Toyota color. Yep. So again, I mean, this again was just a, you know, it was a basement build, just using pictures and, you know, templates and things that I could find. You know, it's gone through that kind of makeover at GMW. It had a cheap Korean Floyd, had to get that off of there. Put a real one on, put the EVH brand Frankenstein pickup in it. Now, the thing about that, when you go to do those, I'm going to try to get this up here close to the camera. You've got to switch out the legs on the humbucker.
Okay.
So the bobbin, this particular, you know, body and this build requires a long leg humbucker. you got to have the long leg base on. So that's part of the build. That's part of the challenge is removing, you know, the bobbins off that base plate and switching it onto a long leg base. So, you know, I did the kill switch, the dead switch in there. The neck pickup is dead. I was able to find the phenolic cover, you know, to make it look close to the real one. Same thing. It's got the frictionless pot there. It's all shielded inside. The neck was the neck is just a Mighty Mite neck, and it was their standard, you know, Floyd cut neck, compound radius, and it played okay when I first, you know, put it together. Again, the action was too high, but really what got me on it was the or what I didn't like about it was just the overall radius, or I'm sorry, the profile of the neck.
Gotcha.
So while Lee had this in his shop, I had him shaved down. They have what's called the Charvel speed spec, and I think it takes it down to 780, 0.780 back here on the first fret. So your thickness from here to here. And originally, you know, it was like 0.830. So you know, we lost like 60 thousandths right here, and it made just such a huge improvement on just feel, because that was causing a lot of, you know, discomfort, you know, right there when you play.
Yeah, I've experienced that before, and it hurts.
Yeah. So just having the neck, you know, the back profile shaved down to Charvel speed spec was just an immediate improvement for me. But then just playability wise, adding the better parts, of course, you know, you got you got to have the right reflectors on there, otherwise you just get laughed out of the group, you know.
I know.
Oh man. So that was part of the fun there too. But yeah, again, this was just such a fun learning experience, and one of the big takeaways really for me, you know, I would say I was kind of a casual fan until I built this. When I built this about four and a half years ago, you know, I really started diving deep into the discography of Van Halen, really started listening to like the deep album cuts that, you know, never made the airplay. And it really, just building this really gave me a whole new appreciation for the band, for Eddie himself, you know, for, you know, all the different reincarnations of this guitar, the history, just the significance. You know, this guitar started a revolution.
It did. It did.
You know, so to go through that and to you kind of channel that inner, you know, Eddie Van Halen when you build one, you feel like you just got a little bit closer to maybe what he was in the thought process behind. Well, you know, let's just go get, you know, some scrap body that the you know, Boogie couldn't sell, or, you know, whatever was on the scrap heap. I'll take that and I'll make it work. And you know, even though there's sort of a formula for putting one of these together correctly, you still have your own sort of, you know, mad scientist, you know, methods that yeah. So you just kind of learn as you go, and you make mistakes, and it's okay if you make a mistake. I mean, there's screw holes all over the back of this thing, and, you know, and that was part of it. So how can you mess it up? And that's kind of my advice if anyone's ever looking to, you know, kind of modify their own or build one of your own. I mean, you can't go wrong.
Exactly. You'll learn more about the instrument. As you say, you'll have a bigger appreciation for Van Halen, for the era that he went through, you know, with basically kind of crap parts for the most part. And, you know, when you itemize this thing, you know, it's not like it's a PRS, you know, private stock guitar. You know, it's pretty crude.
Yeah. And I've even heard some, you know, it's internet folklore, but, you know, some guys that have been close to the real one have said that right there where the you know, the trem posts are in the original, or in the real Frankie, you know, they're just basically wallered out. They're just so worn out that the thing can barely.
I know, yeah. It's like Swiss cheese.
Exactly. Yeah. And from all the years of, you know, the sweat, the humidity, the outdoor concerts. Yeah. Just it takes a toll, right?
It certainly does. Well, you'll be happy to know I have almost all the parts here to build my own Frankie. While I'm a little short, I have the quarters.
Cool. I just keep one right here by my computer. I didn't need it, but you know, actually that was the wrong one. I got one laying here somewhere. But yeah, it's funny when you now every time I get a handful of change, I'm like, all right, where's that quarter? Let me see it. Let's see if I got one.
I have Thanks to Jeff Humphreys from Jay's Tacos and Guitars. He sent me those. He sent me actually a nice an 84. Was it 84 actually? I think it's 84 tour program, and then he sent me a couple quarters, which was fantastic. So that was
cool.
You know, I always make sure I hide those because I don't want Junior walking down to 7-Eleven grabbing a Slurpee or something, using my 71.
Right.
I'm 50 cents short. No, you're gonna be a little bit shorter than that for the next while. That's awesome. It's too bad we lost Carlo. I sent him a message, and I have a feeling he's probably rebooting his computer, so we may not get him back here in time. But that's the thing. Like you really nailed it when you said you really can't go wrong. And what I would suggest, and I don't ever want to scare people when I say I suck at building. I do, and that comes to anything, building furniture, prefab furniture. I'm just not a handyman. But go to your local pawn shop and pick up like a $20 beater guitar, grab a little squat or something, and just spray paint it quickly and get the feel for it. Learn how to tape, and and then whether you want to sand out and back down and do it better, or use it as your practice guitar. We all start somewhere. Just paint up, like Junior and I are painting up a mask. We made it really cool. He's into masks and stuff like that. We did that straight mask, and it doesn't matter if you're painting on wood or plastic. Obviously, it's a different approach, but just kind of getting the feel for stripes and stuff like that. It is a fun process watching it come to life, and step by step by step. And even as I've told him, even painting that simple mask, he wanted to be wearing it that night. I'm like, okay, this if we're going to do this together, it was a fun project together. Have patience, please have patience. Don't go by my previous experience. Have patience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the key.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us about the you mentioned Oz Fox earlier, and I see the Striper guitar in the back. We've got a few more minutes before we wrap up. Tell us a little bit about that guitar.
Well, I'll grab it here real quick.
Yeah, and throw the Frankie back. Good job on that, by the way. Thank you, everyone over the chat, too. We're going to jump over there and say hello again. I've missed a bunch of you. I'll try my best to catch up with you.
So, yeah, this is, it's a GMW. And I think he might have one of the only templates for this. I'm trying to get it up here. There's a curvature here in this Explorer body that the previous you're familiar with Wayne guitars, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure.
So Oz played he played some Wayne guitars there, and back in the early 2000s. And to me, what was always missing was this curvature right here. So I've been a fan of this exact guitar since Soldiers Under Command came out in 1985. On the back of the album cover, Oz is holding this Charvel guitar. It was a Charvel custom, one of a kind, and it's got this same curvature here on the lower end. It too was a bolt-on. Very basic setup, single humbucker, Floyd all the way. And that's what I wanted to replicate. So, I contacted Lee at GMW, and, basically, he walked me through kind of, the ordering process. And he, again, took my specs because, you want it to be what you want. I mean, you want your fret material, your neck material, all that good stuff. So, aside from the standard, paint graphic that, is signature to Oz. I mean, it's a bird's eye neck and just, some different things that he did that I requested. And actually, I'm contemplating sending it back to him to have the hardware swapped out for black.
Okay, that might be neat.
There's just something about hardware, that because the paint graphic is already a reverse of the original from '85. So I'm like, I might do something else with it. But so yeah, this is sort of the crown jewel. It's that one guitar you dream of as a kid building, and this was it. And I contacted a few other people about maybe I thought after the success of the Frankie, maybe I'll try to build this. And the more I started studying this shape and how hard it would have been, and again, comparing, between the Wayne and the GMW model, this one hands down. So, and he was just spectacular to work with. It took him about a year to build it. I mean, he's a one-man shop, and I'll get emails. I would get email updates from him in the middle of the night, and I thought, wow, he's 3 hours behind me in California. So if it's 6 a.m. here, then it's 3 a.m. there. When he's emailing me. But he was just absolute, you know, phenomenal to work with on this. And yeah, it took about a year, maybe a little less, but he went the extra mile and actually sent the back plate to Oz to have autographed. I was supposed to have this ready. Striper was playing in Indianapolis in October that year, and as the months rolled on, I kept, you know, saying, "Hey, Lee, is there any chance I'm, you know, going to do the meet and greet VIP thing, and would like to take it with me to have Oz sign it?" So when the dates kept kind of getting pushed back on the completion of this, he said, "Well, I'll send the back plate over to Oz, get him to sign it, and I'll have it on the guitar when I send it to you," which ended up being a couple months later. So.
Well, that's good. You still got the signature, then that's awesome. Now I can't get over the finish on that. It's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, it's stunning in person. I mean, just, you know, when I look at the back, even I almost wish that was kind of on the front. You know, I mean, it's it's really cool. And you know, just the like the piping around the edges there. That's to me what really sets this apart.
Yeah, almost like you would have binding, like partial binding.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's a stunning guitar. Very, very nice.
Thanks.
So big Striper fan.
Yeah, huge. You know, they were really the first hard rock band I listened to, period. And when they came on this scene in I heard the Yellow and Black Attack in 1984. That was their initial 6-song EP, and I was hooked at that point. You know, I always say, you know, Striper, Dream Theater, Van Halen, and the Beatles. You know, those are my 4 right there.
Oh man. And Carlos just sent me a message. He can't get back in. He lost his connection temporarily there, so he can't get back in. So we'll probably be wrapping up in a moment. So I'm very sorry, Carlo. I'll send you a message. He probably can't hear me right now. He can't hear me. But thank you for showing us that guitar. That's awesome.
Certainly.
Hello and goodbye to everybody over in the chat, because we're going to wrap up in a second. Some people didn't get a chance to read their questions, but Jared's from Tone Wars. I know he jumped in earlier. He's saying hello, everybody. So I didn't get a chance to say hi to you. Mississippi Treasure Hunter says Dave in his prime couldn't be beat live, but the 2-foot shuffle nowadays makes me ill. Wally Walters is saying love Sammy. Chad Boston, our good friend, is here from the Friendly Helix group. Says let's give Eric some likes. And Trey Alabak says I'm a guitar player and a drummer, and a drummer is a huge piece. A drummer has his own sound, and he can't be replaced, period. Same with guitar players. That's exactly right. And Michael B jumps in with a super chat at $1.99, says good stuff. Now I know what my next project is. Do it and have some fun. That's the main thing. You can't go wrong. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Backwards a little bit in the chat since we're down the bunch. So thank you very much, Michael, for the super chat. That's very, very kind of you. Patrick Murphy says nothing for me to pimp. I've got a SoundClick page with a bunch of covers on it. Nothing special. Everything is special. You know, don't ever sell yourself short. Always sell yourself, well, I write music. Don't ever say it's nothing special, because if you wrote it, then it's special, right?
Right.
Patrick Murphy, huge Striper fan, saw them back in '87 with TNT and Loudness, probably seen them 6 times total. Fantastic band. I agree.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people that I hear who have recently seen them for the very first time, they say, wow, like, you know, where have I been for, you know, the last 30 years? Because they still bring it. So
yeah. Patrick also says, remember to paint your own guitar. Bought every instructional they ever put out, how to paint 5150s, Frankie's, Zach's, Bullseye, and stuff like that. That's cool as well. Mississippi Treasure Hunter says, I love the process building my black and white striped Area Pro 2 bass. Loved it. Yeah, it's a fun process. It doesn't have to be, you know, what I really feel bad about sometimes is you'll see some of these, I don't want to say kids, sometimes they're kids, sometimes they're like us as adults, their very first time, and they're all excited and they want to show it off. And then the first time, you know, some of the people will attack. And it's like, right. So I just feel my heart pours for them like that, because you know, put into it.
Right. Yeah, and you know, it becomes something very personal. As soon as you start to do anything to customize, you know, a guitar like that and make it your own, you know, the last thing you want is to have someone really rip it apart like that. So
it's an investment of your time. It's an investment of a lot of stuff to get into it. No, I've seen some that are god awful horrid, probably as bad as what mine would be. But you just have to say, I know where you're coming from. You know what I mean? And I know what it took, the commitment just to say, I'm going to do it. So hats off to you for trying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
There. Let me just open back up the chat here for a second. I have probably about 14 too many windows open. Let's go backwards a little bit in the chat. There's a guy, Trey Alabak says, there's a guy that made a replica on YouTube, and Eddie couldn't tell the difference between the real one and the replica. It was that close. And Mississippi Treasure Hunter says, this is a killer show tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sorry we lost Carlo, and he's saying goodnight to all of us as well, too. He won't be back on, unfortunately, but we'll get him back on for sure. It's nice to have him. And a lot of comments on your Frankie, so a lot of positive.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, Terry's GG&G is here as well, saying hi. Patrick Murphy also says, once I got the Helix, I said I'd never need to buy another piece of gear. Then the power cab. Yeah, it's always... I feel guilty sometimes, do these demos on products, and then people are like, it's nice when they say they bought it because of me. Then I feel like, okay, am I going to get, a hate message from your significant other?
I saw... there's this funny meme that's been scrolling around, or making its rounds on Facebook, and I saw it again today. It's supposedly a sign that's taped up at a music store, and it says, "For an additional $4.99, I will print you a receipt with the price that you said you told your wife how much you paid for the item."
That's awesome. That probably a lot of guys would fall for that too.
I bet they would.
I've seen some other ones similar where a guy goes in, he buys like a beautiful a Sunburst Squire, right? $275, brings it home. Here's the receipt, right? And she goes to work the next day, and you go back and you grab the custom shop Fender, right? Because I'm not saying most of our wives will look in there and they see something with some stripes and they see a Floyd Rose. Okay, I know what you got,
right.
And so, but then there's other wives out there too. They'll look and they're like, "Hey, you never had a green guitar before,
right?
Oh, where'd that come from?" That's funny. But we have. How about your wife? Is she really into your stuff?
She at first not so much. I would say as the collection grew, she just kind of became numb to it. Like, oh, another one. What's in this box? Don't worry about it, honey. Well, So yeah, I mean, she does enjoy it. The funny thing is, I've noticed lately is, the longer things stay in the collection, the more opinionated she'll be about whether I should sell or keep something. If I say, hey, I'm thinking about, we all go through that. Everyone says, oh, I'm thinning the herd so I can, buy something else. And I'll say, well, I think I can let that one go and that one go. She'll say, you're not letting that one go. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know you cared. So apparently there is some interest, but
I like that. And I get that here as well too. There's a lot of times, because I feel guilty if there's another guitar I want to get, I don't want to make a financial huge, dip in the bank. I'll sell something off, or at least that's what I plan on doing.
Right.
And Sandra here, she's like, nope. And it doesn't matter if I bought it last week or I've had it since before we met. She won't let me do it. And no, I have gotten rid of a couple here and there, but just because they're not getting played and things like that. And I can't justify just having it sit here if it's a wall hanger or whatever.
Right.
But I like that.
And it's funny to me that those opinions don't ever get spoken until you mention selling it. It's like, I didn't know, when you brought it in and opened the case and did the unboxing, it's like, oh, okay. But then you mentioned selling it. No, you're not. Like, I didn't know you cared,
Sometimes we don't give them enough credit that they actually, they might say in passing, oh, nice. But they actually do care.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. Let's go over the last few questions over there, at least say hi to a few last people in the chat, and we'll jump off, let everybody have a rest of their Friday evening. Let me see here. Got lots of my Nocturnal Butterfly. That's Sandra Lee herself. She's helped me in the chat tonight, which is great. Trey Alabak is commenting lots of times about the Helix, how it's helped and helped him tremendously. Patrick Murphy used the Fostex back in '84 while in the Army. That's cool. Another
oh, wow.
Veteran for sure. Let me see here. And that's right. Robert Newman, this is good testimony, says, be you guys. We might bring rock back to the forefront. Yeah, be yourself. All of us are chasing, Eddie Van Halen. We're not going to get it 100%. So be you.
Yeah, good advice.
Especially with the quality of the Wolfgang standards, that price with some Futon parts, you can't beat it. Same great sound, literally the same neck as USA models for 700 something. That's right. The Futon stuff, I tell you, it turns into a race car when you add that to any of these guitars.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. One I found the biggest impact, like Futon stuff has really affected all my guitars in a very nice way. But I had one that was just astronomically crazy good, and there's no reason for it. It was my black and white EVH Stripe series. I had a buddy over here one day, and I was telling him about Futon. Most of his guitars are hardtail, so he doesn't use Futon stuff.
Okay.
here for the day. And I was like, here, if you want to hang out while I'm doing this, I'm just changing. I'll show you how you change the trem and all that kind of stuff. Put the brass block on, the titanium stuff, all the stainless steel stuff. And I was like prepared to go into my office. I said, okay, it's in tune. Let's go to my office now and we'll play it and see how it sounds. And I was expecting the same, kind of wow factor that I normally get, which is great, but it was over and above. It just, they all worked together. This guitar resonated from the headstock to the trem.
Wow.
Just with the right piece of wood,
Yep.
I know they're all the same, but it was a magic combination. I even wrote Adam right after. I said, Adam, this is weird. I know you hear this all the time, and I tell you this all the time. Wow, 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 wow. But it was like out of body experience. Wow. It was just so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So, little pieces like that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And see if I missed anything else. Hope I know I missed a few people. I'm very sorry. Chad Boston saying, get Eric some likes. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I'm going to get a coffee for Nocturnal Butterfly with Chad Super Chat. So thank you very much. Listen, I'm really happy to have you. I wanted to give you a big thank you for getting me inspired with those Van Halen patches. And you and I have been doing a lot of trading back and forth, customizing those. But anybody that's on the fence thinking about getting Helix and if they're thinking it can't get Van Halen tones, trust me, you can. I mean, it's any era.
Yeah, any era. Yeah.
Yep. I've got one that's up there right now on the channel here. It's getting the classic Van Halen tone with Helix, and it's actually a patch I did not write other than making some tweaks to Nick Bell's from Line 6.
Yes.
Basically the old plexi sound, and it'll make you a little scared at first when you play through that, because you don't have, well, at least for a lot of us like myself that have that wet, that kind of the wet delay reverb, that comfort zone or security.
Right.
You don't have that with that patch. It's raw.
You can't hide behind the effects because there's like no effect.
No, and the gain. So like every mistake you make, you hear it.
Yeah.
It took me to do 2 rhythm tracks and 2 lead tracks, doubling everything I did. It took me a full day, it was just insane, but it goes to show you can do it. And before we wrap up, just want to say tomorrow at 3 p.m. there's 2 shows actually this weekend. Tomorrow, I talk about my better half here, Nocturnal Butterfly. She's running a show with Will and Leanne on Guitar News Network. I'll put the link in this video after as well too, but just search Guitar News Network as well, and maybe she can throw it in the chat as well too. But they're on at 3 o'clock, talk about everything that's new in the world of guitar. It's kind of a fun, some of it could be hearsay, some of it could be fact, just reporting from the net. So really cool stuff. And I'm back again on the Helix Hour on Sunday, 3 p.m. And I have to make sure I say this correctly, Eastern Daylight Time. I'm always saying Eastern Standard Time, but I guess we have this daylight time, whatever. And I always get this one guy who always corrects me. I'm like, okay, thank you, Father Time. Most people that watch the show, they know what I mean. However, if it's someone's discovering this video for the first time, there could be a difference of an hour or whatever. So
right.
Eastern Daylight Time on Sunday with Andrew Bonica, who's a product owner for Variax at Line C.
Oh.
Well, that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
We're talking about his guitar collection, another military person as well, like yourself. Lots of cool stuff. So fun weekend.
Cool.
Want everyone to have a safe and happy weekend. Brian, thank you so much for joining me. I will say goodbye to you off the air, and I hope everyone had a good time this evening and we warmed up your weekend for you. And we'll talk to you very soon. Hope to see you guys 3 o'clock on Saturday and 3 o'clock over on Guitar News Network tomorrow. You guys have a good one, and we'll see you real soon.
Thanks.
I'll say bye to you off the air. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon. Cheers.